A lot of people get addicted to hopium after they've been cheated on. And in this video, I want to talk about redirecting that hope and what you should be having your hope in. Because for a lot of you, you know the person who cheated on you hurt you. And it wasn't just even in the infidelity. A lot of times the entire relationship was filled with instances of them hurting you. And maybe they're gone and moved on, or maybe you're still with them. But either way, a lot of you get caught in the cycle of wanting to believe that they will change, even though they've shown you zero evidence that they will. And so you're caught between the two truths that feel true to you. I know they hurt me, and I still want them back. And there's just this faint ache of wondering if today might be the day that they finally realize what they lost. And it's embarrassing to still care. You know that. But it's like you can't turn that switch off. In a lot of ways, you're just betraying yourself, it feels like. Because there's some shame around this idea of wanting someone who harmed you to help you. But you're terrified of cutting that final thread to what felt like real love. And if you cut that final thread, are you just admitting to failure? Are you just admitting that it was all a mistake, that none of it was real? But maybe if you hold on, then you can prove that some of this was real. And maybe there are people that you feel like you're letting down. Maybe a childhood version of yourself that swore you would never get divorced. Or maybe families or friends or kids that you feel like are looking up to you to be an example of a healthy relationship because you didn't grow up with any. Are you really willing to give that up, it feels like? And in a lot of ways, a genuine trauma response. It's not just low self-worth. Your self-worth and trauma attachment aren't always operating on the same exact timeline. But one thing to understand is that the emotional attachment that you feel, it doesn't mean that the relationship was good. It could just mean that the bond was intense because there was a lot of inconsistency, ups and downs, and that creates an actual addictive feeling in your brain. So I urge you to give up the idea that closure will come from their apology or from their return. Oftentimes, closure has to come from your own internal clarity, not from something external that someone else does for you. It comes when you pick up the pen and decide to write down your version of what happened. It comes when you pick up the pen and decide to write your future next chapter of what your life is going to look like. But waiting for someone else to write the perfect apology letter is both foolish because it will never be perfect, and it's unrealistic because they're not going to do it. And it's just wrong because even if it were perfect and they did do it, you would receive it, read it, and still feel like, wait, that's not quite it. There's still something else that has to be done. Maybe you have to buy me a dozen roses and then apologize with a boombox on your shoulder playing our favorite song from when we first met. Our minds start doing ridiculous things because we want to keep externalizing it and not face something about the story that we already know. Another thing to remember with all of this is that the brain craves familiarity. Humanity as a whole, we tend to evolve. Society changes as a whole, change a lot. But the individuals, we crave certainty. We crave the same. And so we'll often choose a painful dynamic that's familiar over a potentially pleasant dynamic that's unknown. And oftentimes the hope of maybe they'll change can sort of be a painkiller, numbing your attention from what's actually hurting. What might be most painful might not even be the fact that they're gone. It might be some other part of the story. And because that other part is so painful, it's like your nervous system is just saying, just keep pumping more hope into them, even though it knows that it's over. For some of you, it might be the future that you thought you had. For some of you, it might be the past memories that were really nice, even though it was just during the first couple of months and then it was kind of nasty after that. There were certain moments that were so meaningful and so beautiful that it's really hard to give it up because it feels like that means it was all fake. If you want some practical tips, start with just naming the hope clearly. Just say, a part of me still hopes they'll come back. And don't add in any qualifications. You're just saying this to yourself. You don't need to prove yourself to anybody. You don't need to word it like, a part of me still hopes they'll come back, even though I'm so stupid for thinking that. Just say the one feeling on its own. A part of me still hopes they'll come back, and sit with that. A part of me still hopes. A part of me still believes that they can change. A part of me still is expecting them to show up any day now. A part of me is expecting a come to Jesus moment that they have with themselves, with God, with me, and suddenly everything is perfect. That's what I'm genuinely expecting. Just saying it can get rid of a lot of its power. And they need to separate the person from the fantasy. Write down 2 lists, who they actually were and who you wish they were. And you might tell me, well, I don't know how to separate the two. Separate it by their actions versus their words. So many people are so good at telling me exactly what their partner would say to a question that I ask them. I say all the time, I'm not asking what they think. I'm asking what you think. And if you aren't thinking, I'm asking you to think. Who were they actually? Get clear on that. And then redirect hope. Instead of hoping that they'll change, hope that you'll change. Instead of hoping for a future with them, hope for a future with a new partner. And instead of hoping that a miracle will happen where they will suddenly magically transform who they are, even though they don't want to change, hope that you will magically transform. Hope that you will have the miracle happen to you and you won't need them anymore. Another practical tip is just limit the emotional triggers at first. This isn't a good long-term strategy because triggers are helpful to identify parts of ourselves that haven't healed so that we can heal them. But if you're early on in the process, just stop checking their social media so much. Stop rereading messages. Stop revisiting old photos. Let yourself have some space from them. And then create a vision of your own future. It doesn't have to be super practical. This isn't about getting a ABC 1, 2, 3 goals and sub-goals and timelines type of vision set up. Have it be more emotional. Have an actual image in your mind of what you want your life to be like in the future without them, on your own, or with another person. That way you have something your hope can be directed to. Because I'll tell you this, even if what you come down to is saying, well, now I have 2 versions of hope. I have the hope that things will work out, and I have the hope of if it doesn't work out. That is 10 times better. That's 10,000 times better than only having one option. So much of the misery we have in our life is because we're convinced there's only one way things can work out. Once you actually make peace with a multitude of options going forward into the future, you can have peace right now. Also, remember throughout that attachment isn't love. Love allows space for free. Love wants the other person to thrive and to be on their own. Love is not codependency. You want a deeper notion of love than the one that's created through trauma bonding, where you're both full, complete humans, and you also happen to love each other and want to spend your life together. And remember also that, sometimes people feel like, well, I want the best for them, so I have to hold out hope that they'll change and come back. Hope and forgiveness and patience, these are all separate categories. You can genuinely want the best for someone and love them without holding out a false hope for them that they'll change. And you are not required to wait the rest of your life for someone else to catch up to where you're at. Clinging to any specific outcome that you're looking for will cause suffering. It just will. Peace often comes from loosening that grip. And if you find yourself annoyed by the way that this video is quickly getting back to a lot of the core, fundamental, spiritual, personal development, self-improvement type of issues and questions, then my word of warning to you would be, these patterns will repeat until we consciously break them. If you just let these patterns exist in your unconscious mind and you don't bring some awareness to them and choose to live differently, then I don't care what you think might happen in your next relationship, you'll just go through the same cycle again. I've seen it so many times. I've heard many stories where the person did come back. They did return. They finally got what they wanted, only to realize, surprise, surprise, that it was not the version of them that they had hoped for who returned. It was the version they always were. Because most people, if they're honest, if you're watching this video and understanding what I'm saying up to this point, yeah, there were good moments, but if you're being honest, it was like 10% of the time, 20% of the time. Most of it was neutral at best or pretty bad. What would happen in your life if you stopped dreaming about reconciliation and started dreaming about rebuilding your own identity? What would happen if you stopped focusing on your ex's ability or lack of ability to transform as a person and started focusing on your own capacity to transform? The part of you that wants to hold on, that's good, but what you're holding on to needs to shift. You need to go from hope to healing, and it requires honesty. You can start to heal even while recognizing part of you is still holding on. And please remember that letting go isn't some admission that you never loved them. It just means that that story, that relationship, that chapter has come to a close. Every good thing has an end date. Even if you believe in life after death, there are still experiences that you will only experience in this exact way one time. The day that you're listening to this video is the only time you will experience this day. It could be the best day of your life. It will still come to an end. That is a natural part of life. Some chapters come to a close. So don't feel like you have to force yourself to stop hoping. Just start hoping for something you're in more control of.